From tank battalions that Patton called his best, to fighter squadrons with the lowest bomber loss rate in the 15th Air Force, these black units changed warfare while fighting two wars at once. In 1942, the Pittsburgh Courier launched the Double V campaign. Victory abroad against fascism. Victory at home against racism. Over 1 million black Americans would serve in uniform during World War II, but the segregated military assigned most to labor and service roles, loading ships, driving trucks, digging graves. The belief was simple and ugly. Black soldiers couldn't fight. The unit you're about to meet proved that assumption catastrophically wrong. The 92nd Infantry Division carried the legacy of the original Buffalo Soldiers, black cavalrymen who earned their name fighting on the American frontier. In World War II, they would become the only black infantry division to see sustained ground combat in Europe. Reactivated in October 1942, the division trained for nearly 2 years at the isolated Fort Huachuca in Arizona, far from population centers by design. The Army's solution to having 15,000 armed black men in one place was to put them in the middle of the desert. In August 1944, elements of the 92nd landed in Naples and joined the Fifth Army's brutal slog up the Italian peninsula. Their mission? The western flank along the Ligurian coast, pushing against German positions in the Serchio River Valley, and eventually cracking the Gothic Line. The fighting was relentless: mountain warfare, house-to-house combat, artillery barrages, and terrain that favored the defender at every turn. By war's end, the 92nd had advanced over 3,000 square miles, captured nearly 24,000 German prisoners, and liberated the Italian cities of La Spezia and Genoa. Of the 12,846 Buffalo soldiers who saw action, 2,848 were killed, wounded, or captured. The division earned over 12,000 decorations, including 2 Medals of Honor, awarded decades later to First Lieutenant John R. Fox and First Lieutenant Vernon J. Baker. What set them apart? The 92nd was the only black infantry division in the European theater. They fought alongside the legendary 442nd Regimental Combat Team, Japanese-American soldiers, creating one of the war's most diverse fighting forces. The 93rd Infantry Division wore a French helmet on their shoulder, a reminder of World War I, when their predecessor regiments fought under French command because American generals refused to put black soldiers in combat. Reactivated in May 1942, the 93rd became the first black infantry division shipped overseas in World War II, arriving in the Pacific Theater in early 1944. Their destination, Guadalcanal, then Bougainville. On April 5, 1944, the 25th Infantry Regiment, part of the 93rd, engaged Japanese forces on Bougainville, becoming the first black infantry unit to see combat in the Pacific. Company K ambushed Japanese infiltrators near Hill 250, taking casualties but holding their ground. Unlike the 92nd, the 93rd was largely relegated to security and garrison duty, guarding supply lines, conducting patrols, relieving white divisions for amphibious assaults. The Army's skepticism kept them from the heaviest fighting. But on Morotai Island, division patrols captured Colonel Katsutoshi Aochi, the highest-ranking Japanese prisoner taken by black troops in the entire Pacific War. What set them apart? The 93rd served across the Pacific, from Guadalcanal to the Philippines, in conditions where disease killed as many soldiers as the enemy. They freed veteran divisions for the island-hopping campaign that won the war. The 761st Tank Battalion was told they couldn't think fast enough to fight in armor. They answered by becoming one of the most effective tank units in the European theater. Formed in April 1942 at Camp Claiborne, Louisiana, the 761 spent over 2 years proving they were combat-ready, longer than any white tank battalion. The Army kept finding reasons not to deploy them. That changed in October 1944, when General George Patton, desperate for armor, requested the 761st for his Third Army. Before their first engagement, Patton addressed them directly. "Men, you're the first Negro tankers to ever fight in the American Army. I would never have asked for you if you weren't good. I don't care what color you are, so long as you go up there and kill those Kraut sons of bitches." On November 7, 1944, the Black Panthers entered combat at Morville-les-Vicq. They wouldn't stop fighting for 183 consecutive days. 183 days. No other tank battalion in Patton's army matched that record. They fought through France and Belgium. They helped break the siege at Bastogne during the Battle of the Bulge. They cracked the Siegfried Line. They were among the first American units to link up with Soviet forces in Austria. Staff Sergeant Reuben Rivers earned the Medal of Honor, posthumously, and not until 1997, 52 years after he died, leading his tank through enemy fire with a leg wound so severe his bone was exposed. What set them apart? The 761st inflicted over 130,000 enemy casualties. They earned 11 Silver Stars, 70 Bronze Stars, and a Presidential Unit Citation, though that citation wasn't awarded until 1978, 3 decades after the war. The 614th Tank Destroyer Battalion was built to kill German armor. They did exactly that, while becoming the first black unit to earn a Distinguished Unit Citation. Organized in July 1942, the 614th trained as a towed unit, using half-tracks to drag 3-inch M5 anti-tank guns into battle. They landed in France in October 1944 and were attached to the 103rd Infantry Division, a pairing that would last through the end of the war. On December 14, 1944, the 3rd Platoon of Company C faced their defining moment at Klimbach, France. Ordered to take a town the Germans had orders to hold at all costs, Lieutenant Charles Thomas led his men against entrenched SS troops. Thomas was hit almost immediately, then hit again. Bleeding from multiple wounds, he continued directing fire until another officer could take command. Half the platoon became casualties. 3 of 4 anti-tank guns were destroyed. They took the town. The 3rd Platoon received the Distinguished Unit Citation, the first awarded to any black American unit in World War II. Thomas received the Distinguished Service Cross, upgraded to the Medal of Honor in 1997. What set them apart? The 614th fought from France to Austria, earning 8 Silver Stars and 30 Bronze Stars. Many white soldiers of the 103rd Division came home with changed views on race, changed by the men who fought beside them. The Tuskegee Airmen proved that black pilots could fly and fight, as well as anyone in the sky. The program began as an experiment, In 1941, the Army Air Corps established a segregated training facility at Tuskegee, Alabama, to see if black men could be taught to fly military aircraft. Nearly 1,000 pilots graduated. They would prove their worth over the skies of Europe. The 99th Fighter Squadron deployed to North Africa in April 1943, flying P-40 Warhawks against Axis forces. Critics claimed they underperformed. In January 1944, pilots of the 99th shot down 12 German fighters in 2 days, silencing the doubters. By mid-1944, the 332nd Fighter Group, now including the 99th, 100th, 301st, and 302nd Squadrons, had transitioned to P-51 Mustangs and joined the 15th Air Force in Italy. Their mission? Colonel Benjamin O. Davis, Jr. ordered his pilots to stay close to the bombers they protected, even when enemy fighters tried to lure them away. The strategy worked. Over 179 bomber escort missions, the 332nd lost only 27 bombers to enemy aircraft, compared to an average of 46 for other 15th Air Force groups. The legend that they never lost a bomber was an exaggeration, but their record was among the best in the war. On March 24, 1945, the Red Tails escorted B-17s over 1,600 miles to Berlin and back. They shot down 3 Me-262 jet fighters, Germany's most advanced aircraft, earning a distinguished unit citation for the mission. What set them apart? The Tuskegee Airmen flew 1,578 combat missions, destroyed 112 aircraft in the air and 150 on the ground, and earned 96 distinguished flying crosses. In 2007, the surviving airmen received the Congressional Gold Medal. The 477th Bombardment Group trained to bring the air war to the enemy's homeland. They never got the chance. Activated in January 1944, the 477 was the first black bomber group in American military history. Their crews trained on B-25 Mitchell medium bombers, preparing for combat operations in the Pacific Theater. But the 477th's war was fought at home. At Freeman Field, Indiana, in April 1945, over 100 black officers were arrested for attempting to enter a whites-only officers' club, an act of mass civil disobedience that became known as the Freeman Field Mutiny. The war ended before the 477th could deploy. They never dropped a bomb in combat, but their resistance to segregation helped lay the groundwork for the integration of the armed forces 3 years later. What set them apart? The 477th's fight wasn't overseas. It was against the injustice of their own military. Their sacrifice was different, but no less important. The 555th Parachute Infantry Battalion became the first black paratroopers in American history. Their war took them not to Europe or the Pacific, but to the forests of the American West. Activated in December 1943 at Fort Benning, Georgia, the 555 was formed from volunteers, many from the 92nd Infantry Division. They called themselves the Triple Nickels, a play on their numerical designation, and the Buffalo Nickel that honored their Buffalo soldier heritage. By 1944, the Triple Nickels were combat-ready, but commanders in Europe refused to accept black paratroopers alongside white units. Instead, in May 1945, the 555 received a classified mission. Operation Firefly. Japan had launched over 9,000 balloon bombs across the Pacific, designed to start forest fires in the American Northwest. The 555th was trained as military smoke jumpers, parachuting into burning wilderness to fight fires and defuse bombs. They made over 1,200 jumps that summer, fighting 36 fires from Oregon to California. One soldier, Private First Class Malvin Brown, died when his parachute caught in a 200-foot tree and he fell to his death. He was the first smoke jumper killed in the line of duty. After the war, General James Gavin selected the 555 to integrate into the 82nd Airborne Division, making them the first black unit absorbed into a previously all-white division. Their excellence helped end segregation in the Army. What set them apart? The Triple Nickels pioneered military smoke jumping, a technique still used today. They never fired a shot at the enemy, but their service was no less dangerous. The Red Ball Express wasn't a combat unit, but without them, Patton's tanks would have stopped dead in their tracks. After D-Day, Allied armies raced across France faster than anyone expected. The problem? French railroads had been destroyed by Allied bombing, and the only deep-water port, Antwerp, was still in German hands. Supplies had to move by truck. In August 1944, American commanders created the Red Ball Express, a massive truck convoy running 24 hours a day from Normandy to the front lines. Nearly 6,000 trucks, over 23,000 drivers, and 75% of those drivers were black. They drove day and night on narrow French roads, often under German air attack. They delivered gas, ammunition, food, and medical supplies, everything an army needs to keep advancing. At its peak, the Red Ball moved 12,500 tons per day. The boundaries between combat and support blurred quickly. Red Ball drivers delivered fuel under artillery fire. They fought through ambushes. An armored division commander said the black drivers delivered gas under constant fire. Damned if I'd want their job. Patton himself declared, "The 2.5-ton truck is our most valuable weapon." What set them apart? The Red Ball Express operated for 82 days and delivered over 400,000 tons of supplies. Without them, the liberation of France would have stalled. On June 6, 1944, the 320th Barrage Balloon Battalion became the only all-black unit to storm the beaches of Normandy. Barrage balloons were a World War I technology. Hydrogen-filled blimps, tethered by steel cables to create a hazard for low-flying aircraft. The 320th's mission was to get those balloons into the air over Omaha and Utah beaches, protecting the invasion force from German strafing runs. They landed 2 hours after the first wave, under the same murderous fire that killed thousands of infantrymen. The standard balloon winch weighed half a ton, too heavy for an assault landing. So the soldiers of the 320th improvised, using modified telephone wire reels, weighing just 35 pounds. The first balloon went up at 11:15 that night. Within days, 141 balloons protected the beachhead. One German aircraft flew into the cables and crashed into the English Channel. The 320th served 140 days at Normandy, protecting the vital supply line that fed the Allied advance. 3 soldiers were killed in action. 17 were wounded. Corporal Waverly Woodson, Jr., a medic with the 320th, saved dozens of lives on Omaha Beach while wounded himself. He was recommended for the Medal of Honor. 80 years later, that medal still hasn't been awarded. What set them apart? The 320th was both the first black unit and the only American barrage balloon unit to land on D-Day. They protected the invasion that liberated Europe. These weren't separate wars. They were one fight, waged on 2 fronts, against fascism abroad and racism at home. 3 years after the war ended, President Truman signed Executive Order 9981, officially desegregating the American military. The men who proved black soldiers could fight made that order possible. Today, their legacy is carried by every soldier, sailor, airman, and Marine who serves in an integrated force, the most powerful military on Earth. Thank you for watching. If you want to learn more about any of these units, drop a comment below. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you learned something new.